I rushed to the after my 102-year-old father collapsed. My wife said she was already there, but the nurse whispered, "You are the first family member we have seen." I was only 15 minutes from home when my phone rang. The hospital told me my 102-year-old father had been rushed into the emergency room after collapsing at his retirement home. My hands shook as I called my wife. She answered calmly and said she was already at the hospital with him. She even told me not to drive too fast because everything was under control. But the moment I reached the emergency room, a nurse looked at me with confusion and quietly said something that changed my life forever. "You are the first family member who has arrived." If my wife had never been there, then where had she really been that night? Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional family mysteries with shocking twists, subscribe now because every week we bring stories that will leave you questioning everything. I slammed my car into the hospital parking lot faster than I ever had before. Every second felt like an hour as I replayed my father's voice in my head. At 102 years old, he still called me every Sunday without fail. He still joked about outliving everyone. The thought of losing him made my chest feel heavy. My wife had sounded strangely calm on the phone, almost too calm, but I convinced myself everyone reacts differently in emergencies. I rushed through the sliding doors expecting to see her comforting my father. Instead, I found nurses moving quickly through the hallway and no sign of her anywhere. The nurse at the reception desk checked the patient list before looking directly into my eyes. She asked if I was the son. When I said yes, her expression softened. Then she quietly told me I was the first family member who had arrived since my father had been admitted nearly an hour earlier. My stomach tightened instantly. I explained that my wife had already called me from inside the hospital. The nurse looked confused and even checked visitor records. There was no record of my wife entering the building. At that moment, I realized someone had lied to me, and I could not understand why. Thankfully, my father survived the initial emergency and was stable enough to speak. He squeezed my hand and whispered that he had been asking for both me and my wife since arriving. No one had visited him. While the doctors continued treatment, I stepped outside and called my wife again. This time she did not answer. Minutes later, she texted that her phone battery had died and she was still somewhere inside the hospital cafeteria. I searched every floor including the cafeteria, waiting rooms and parking garage. She was nowhere to be found. A strange feeling settled over me because nothing she said matched reality. Around the middle of the night, my father asked me to bring his wallet from home because it contained important insurance information. When I reached our house, I noticed our bedroom closet door was open. Several folders were missing, including documents related to my father's finances and property. My wife finally returned home just before sunrise. She claimed she had become confused during the hospital emergency and accidentally driven to another medical center across town. Her explanation sounded rehearsed. Something inside me refused to believe it anymore. If this story has you wondering what really happened, take a second to like the video and share it with someone who enjoys emotional family mysteries. Now let me show you the evidence that changed everything. The next morning, my father quietly admitted something he had never told anyone. Several months earlier, he had updated his estate plan because he wanted every decision to remain fair among the family. Only his attorney and one trusted witness knew the details. Suddenly, I understood why someone might have wanted to know exactly when he became critically ill. My wife had recently been asking unusual questions about his finances, his house, and whether any paperwork had changed. At the time, I believed she was simply trying to help organize family records. Unable to ignore the growing doubts, I asked a licensed private investigator to review available information. Within days, he uncovered security footage from a gas station and nearby businesses. During the exact time my wife claimed she was sitting beside my father in the emergency room, she was meeting someone across town. There was nothing illegal shown in the footage, but it completely disproved her story about being at the hospital. When I confronted her with the timeline, she could not explain the contradiction. The truth finally surfaced during a meeting with our family attorney. My wife admitted she had never gone to the hospital. She believed my father would not survive the night and decided to locate paperwork she thought might affect future inheritance decisions before I returned home. Her plan failed because my father recovered, and every important legal document was already secured with the attorney months earlier. Hearing her admit that she had chosen paperwork over standing beside an elderly man fighting for his life broke something inside me that could never be repaired. My father later recovered enough to leave the hospital. He looked at me with tired but peaceful eyes and reminded me that money can replace almost everything except trust. He said people reveal their true character during someone else's worst day. I realized the greatest gift my father had left me was not his savings or his property, but the wisdom to recognize loyalty before it is too late. I ended the marriage because once trust disappears, every promise becomes meaningless. Today my father is still smiling despite everything that happened. Every Sunday we still share coffee together, grateful for another week of life. Whenever I think about that terrifying phone call, I remember that the most painful betrayal was not the emergency itself but discovering who truly stood beside my family when everything was falling apart. If this story reminded you that loyalty is proven through actions rather than words, subscribe for more unforgettable family dramas, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this story with someone who believes honesty always wins in the end. Sometimes the greatest heartbreak is not losing someone you love. It is discovering the person you trusted most was never where they promised to be. In the end, truth arrived before betrayal could hide forever, and karma always finds its way home.